Brian, you are the first person to join on at least my screen, so I'm going to start with you. Hello, Brian. How are you? I hope you're well. And then Aditi, you are next. And then in we come. We've got Luke and Laurie, and a few more people joining. I can't do personal introductions to everybody because we're going to run out of time if I have to read everyone's name out. Salim, hi. So listen, everyone always starts these things with a where you're from. But I'm going to tell you this. I don't care where you're from because that doesn't matter. What matters more to me is two questions. One is, how long have you been working in any capacity? Where are you in your career? Freshly out of grad school, or are you mid-career, or are you senior and experienced? So that's one question. And the second one is, are you currently in a role, or are you looking to pivot into something, as in chasing down a job? Because answering those two questions is going to help me help you most effectively. Because the content that we're going to go through today, it's all about how you can make an impact in your current role and how you can then use that to make a pivot or transition into a new job. So in the chat, tell me, where are you in your career, early, mid, or late? And whether you are in a role that you're happy with and you want to learn how to make a greater impact, or whether you're looking to pivot. They are the two questions. And whilst we're on that, whilst we're in this kind of early, we haven't even started, introductory bit, I'm going to put this slide up. I'm going to put this slide up because at some point I have done enough of these that at some point someone says, hey, why don't we all share our LinkedIn details, which is a brilliant idea because one of the great things about these kind of workshops is that opportunity to network and build a little bit of a community. But instead of everyone writing that in the chat and then not being able to find it later and then not being able to find any information, go to this link. It is a simple G sheet. It's not a complicated piece of technology, and drop your LinkedIn details in there. And that way you will be able to come back to it and find everyone else. Now, we had this conversation yesterday in a different time zone, and everyone on there, on the list so far, attended this workshop yesterday and would also love to hear from people in a similar boat. So jump in via the QR code, and I will also drop a link into the chat here if I can find it. Always slick and professional, Andy. That's right. Okay. Early stage. Okay. All right. So click into there. I can see there are a few people already in this sheet, which is great. We've got early, and a pivot, mid-career pivot, late, mid. Okay, cool. All right, that's really helpful. Thank you for letting me know and answering that. The other thing I'm going to say, just as a final few people are joining, is that this session is 90 minutes and it's going to be very intense. But there is one thing that I want to say is that the real value is not in the 90 minutes that comes next. It's what happens after. It's what you do because you've been here now. Now, there's a strong tendency for a lot of people seeking to go to a webinar and tick off a list and say, I've done something and I've taken action. So coming here is a great start, but doing something differently because you've come here is the important step. So we'll be doing a few like starter exercises, some sort of germination seeds of thinking. So you're going to need a pen and paper, but they're just the start point. And so what I want you to do as we go through the session is to listen into something that resonates and find that one thing that you're going to do, your one takeout out of the next 90 minutes, and then make a commitment to doing something differently afterwards. And if I had to summarize, if I had to say one thing, if I wanted to give you the one thing to take away out of the next minutes, it is simply this, and that is, without structure, you will fail, because the barrier between you and your contribution is it's so many things. There are internal, there are external, the market shifts, there's the overwhelming complexity, your own imposter syndrome, the whole overwhelming miasma or mess that you're stepping into. And without having a step-by-step approach, the amount of time that you waste will be massive. So the one thing is consciously structure your approach to your career. Okay, so quick reminder, you're going to need a pen and paper. Secondly, drop your LinkedIn details into the Climate Connect sheet here so that you can find and connect with everybody else who's on this webinar and yesterday's workshop too. But before we kick off, we should really hear from our very gracious hosts. And so, Chasma, please tell us about the wonderful work that Work on Climate does and how these guys can get involved.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andy. And hello, everyone. I am Chasma. And if you're new to Work on Climate and this is your first event, welcome, welcome. Work on Climate is a global community of professionals seeking to use their talent to really solve climate change and to build regenerative green economy, where all work strengthens natural and human systems. We help you all to build relationships, to find opportunities, to use your strengths, and then act on those strengths together to create this regenerative transformation. So right now, there are a couple of QR codes on the screen. Go ahead and scan those to find more information and get really involved with Work on Climate. Two other things I really want to mention before we get started with Andy's session is that we will be recording the session, and we expect to leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers. And with that said, thank you again for joining, and back to you, Andy.
Thank you very much. All right. It's getting real now. I've got a standy-uppy, sitty-downy desk that goes up and down, and we're moving into the standing up zone because we're gonna get into this. We're gonna have a break about halfway through for 5 minutes. So, thank you, Chasma. We've talked a little bit about this, about starting here for a community building sense. Now, hopefully, you are all here because you want to make an impact. You want to make the world a better place. You want to fill that existential void that is left by pointless work, or you're here because you just want to get a job and make your contribution. But I'm here because of one question, and that question is this. Now, this was asked of me from the French CMO of an international global cosmetics company that you will know, but I will not name, standing in a boardroom with 30 of their leadership team eagerly waiting to hear my answer. Now, for context, I'd spent the past 3 weeks pushing my team to work evenings, had spent all of the previous weekend working around the clock to pull the data together to tell the story and answer this. My team were exhausted, I was on the edge of breakdown, and when this question came, midway through the session, I just had this white noise and the increasingly loud voice in my head that simply said, what the fuck am I doing with my life? Because this kind of question, the hours, the stress, the fake urgency, all for answering this. And meanwhile, the world is on fire, and my only contribution at the time was taking my own cup to Starbucks. So I took this moment as a sign, and I quietly quit the next week. And I took my existing coaching and mentoring practice in a direction that wasn't aimed at helping corporate high performers get better at the things that I didn't care about, but help them actually find the work that matters. And that led me to this realization that my mission is your contribution. Because my route to this point had been, I guess, a classic successful career. It was business school, top tier consultancy, a stint at Citibank doing internal strategy, and then stepping into advisory and taking startups through to successful exits. So all of that kind of classic up. And I had a lot of experience with multiple career shifts on each step. And it occurred to me that when I wanted to make a better contribution, the biggest contribution that I could make was helping bring the talent to the fight for climate. And now I've helped hundreds of professionals get started in climate without having to start over. I specialize in helping mid-career professionals who are trying to make this shift. An important thing I want you to hear is if you're in that situation and you're finding it hard, you are not broken. You are not behind. What you're doing is something really hard. Trying to change lanes mid-career into a space where the rules aren't always clear. It is hard, but there is a process that works. And there are common mistakes that you can avoid if you know them, or if you have someone like me who can point them out for you. And the biggest mistake that I see is focusing on the wrong things. So just to be clear, in today's workshop, there will be absolutely no CV or resume help, because change will not come from changing your CV. It comes from changing your calendar, the people that you meet and the things that you do. And bluntly, you are all smart, capable, intelligent people that can find the 9 hot tips to make your CV stand out, and because you all know how to use Google and ChatGPT. Okay, I hope that just sets some expectations. What I'm more interested in is the steps and the structure to designing your career in making a meaningful contribution. And in doing so, this is what we're going to cover. We're going to talk a little bit about what counts as a climate job, because so many people make a mistake of thinking it has to be something with climate in the title. We're going to have a quick look at your existing leverage, and then we're going to quickly cover the 3 essentials for your climate career. Okay, so I asked at the start, who is actively job hunting, who is wondering about making more impact on where they are now. Either way, this is the right place. We're going to have a little bit of both. And the reason for that is because your sense of contribution, changing where you are, changing the work around you, directly bleeds into a proof case that you can use for making a career pivot. Okay, I want to begin with a look at what we mean by contribution. And I use the word contribution rather than job or role or career because I deliberately want something that is all-encompassing. And that's because most of my clients at the start, time and again, they start by looking at job boards as their route to impact. And that misses so much because too often we mistake contribution for job. So we're just going to unpick this piece first. So how you make your contribution, there are 2 things. There is your content, which is what you do, and there is your context, which is where you do it. Bringing those 2 things together is loosely defined as your contribution. Now, you might find it easier to think of as your role or job and the sector you do it in. But like I said, I've deliberately chosen more open terms because I want to break down that thinking that just looks as jobs as the end goal and open ourselves to this broader context of career. So then the question is, what are you wanting and willing and able to change of these 2 things? And I should tell you, this is as complicated as my diagrams get. But what I have found is that at the start of the journey, most people believe that everything has to change, that they need a new job in a new sector. And let's face it, that's true because a good proportion of why we want to make a contribution is because what we're doing right now isn't working anymore and we're dissatisfied. It feels pointless and contrived in the face of a world on fire. So naturally we start shaking things up and we go looking for jobs that have climate in the title because we don't know where else to look. So we're up here in this quadrant. But part of my work is to remind you that this double step is the hard one. That your contribution consists of any combination of role and context, including, of course, this one. Same role, same context. A job doesn't have to say climate to have an impact. It's about your remit, your decisions, your influence. So HR, finance, ops, marketing, every job has a touch point that counts. And if you're working in a company right now, you can immediately start thinking about the climate connotations of the work that your organization does and your ability to influence that. So for example, I worked with a client called Mark. He was working in procurement in a large international organization, and he was keen to escape so that he could make his impact. But as part of working together, we reviewed the levers that he could pull where he was, and we realized that he could build a proof project to support this pivot. So he changed the supplier criteria of the company procurement process to include increased transparency around supply chain data. Doesn't sound like much, but that enabled a much more granular provision of greenhouse gas accounting transparency, which, although it was a small change, made a massive impact because of the scale of his organization. Was it a climate job? No. Did it have a massive impact on climate and emissions? Yes. Similarly, I worked with a woman called Juliana. She was in marketing and comms, and she put the case forward to trial a shift in messaging around her company's green credentials. Much smaller company, so she was able to exert much more influence to explore the consumer response to this. Now, we did this. She showed that it was positive and that it was well received, and that gave her an increased mandate to push for more shifts in the company practice that would allow further messaging around green credentials to be supported. So there is work that you can do where you are that helps with climate, irrespective of whether you're shifting or not. But these two things are not in competition. In fact, they often reinforce each other because, and this is really important, action now builds stories and skills that fuel a future pivot. So when I was thinking about this workshop, I spent a very, very long time, far too long to be honest. Back in my career theory books, I prepped an introduction to the concept of identity and self and career. And I built a really complicated diagram to show all the different ways that we can make a contribution and how your choice will be based on your unique blend of push and pull factors. But then I realized that I was actually just enjoying this academic side of my work too much. And I saw the little side of screen post-it note, which I keep for myself, that just says, how does this help? So I scrapped all of that and I decided to wrap this up with a simple summation point. A line in the sand that I borrowed from Jamie Alexander from Project Drawdown and her 2021 TEDx talk. And that is this. A climate job is any job where your effort moves us away from harm and towards regeneration. The job title doesn't really matter, not nearly as much as the problem that you're solving and the contribution that you can make. So whether that is work in a climate-faced, mission-driven, purpose-led organization, or in a more traditional company that can improve its practices. So remember, when I asked right at the start, if you're looking to change a job or change a system around you, in many ways it doesn't matter. What matters and what starts us on this journey is a consideration of your levers of influence. So it's the what do you influence? Is it budget or process or messaging or product? Where can you reduce harm? What do you know that others don't? And this is the first lever. So you already hold the keys to certain doors. And what we're going to do is a very quick dip exercise all together on pen and paper, just to get us thinking about the leverage that you have. And this exercise is called, no prizes, leverage mapping. So if you're on camera, wave your pen and paper around so that I can see that everyone has their pen and paper ready. Who is on camera? Yes, yep. Veronica, have you got a pen and paper? Yes, okay. If you're not using pen and paper and you've got a trendy digital note taker, that's okay too. And if you're typing, that's okay. If you're typing, give me wiggly fingers. I'm typing, Andy. Don't pick on me. Okay. Yes, Salim. Okay. All right. Okay. So, leverage mapping. First question. Write down 3 things that you influence in your current role. And this should be possible for everybody at every stage of their career. And if you're currently looking for work but not in work, think about the last role that you did. If you're an absolutely brand new fresh graduate, think about the things that you know that other people don't. Because every role in every organization involves the management of resources in the broadest possible sense of that word. And your ability to influence those is the key to your impact. So take a moment now. Do you own a budget? Do you run a set of tools? Are you involved in decision-making, strategy, procurement? Do you own the relationships? What soft power do you have? If you decided to organize a lunch and learn, would people come to it because you're Captain Popular? What about supplier choice? Is there something that you can do around the supply chain? So I'm going to give this 3 minutes. So it's just turned 21 past N, where N is the hour in your time zone. I'm going to give that to 24. And whilst you guys do that, I'm going to go on mute so you don't feel like I'm looking over your shoulder, and I'm going to sit down. Okay, how are we getting on? We've got 60 seconds. We've got, well, that's better. Neil, I can see you're wandering around. It's pretty wild wide watching this. Upside down. Okay, quick tour of your house. Like it. Okay, so the levers that you can pull. The next question is, how might pulling one of these levers make a climate positive impact? And look, you've got 3 minutes for this. So let this be the spark, the curiosity builder that starts your thinking. So next to each of those ideas, next to each of those levers, have a think. Is there a change here that might impact emissions? Could you start a conversation by making a change in any of these spheres of influence that you have? Is there something that you could do that would change someone else's behavior? There's some very easy ones. Could be starting a lunch and learn in your team. But there are also more involved things, like you can create a carbon shadow report with a simple online tool, whether that's just for one team, one section, one part of your organization. Because what matters isn't the you've done an incredible report that's going to make a dramatic impact. Sometimes it is just the awareness and your ability to do this, which is going to increase your confidence and your capability. Other things might be adding climate to the risk register if you're in a large enough organization. So proposing a new climate-related risk or opportunity in your team's existing risk framework, maybe that's supply chain or brand reputation or regulation, is a great way to start these conversations because it often gets overlooked in non-climate based teams. You could pilot the use and involvement of a green KPI. So you could look to embed a climate-related metric into your regular team reporting. So there's lots of creative different ways that you can use the influence that you've got to start this conversation. So we're going to have, like I say, 3 minutes now. for each of the levers that you can pull, just to brainstorm what you've got. Now, as you go through this, if you finish early, drop some in the chat, because this is the awesome power of these workshops, is there will be lots of people having lots of ideas. And so no matter how far-fetched or outrageous your idea is, if you share it and someone else can pick it up, then you're doing them a favor. So drop some of these ideas in the chat with this lever and this action. And we're going to finish that just as we get to N29, where N is the hour in your time zone. Okay. So look, like I say, this is a 3-minute quick dip. So when you come back to this notes, and remember I was saying the important thing is what happens after this 90 minutes, come and use this. Somewhat obvious, but there was an AI prompt that I built which will speed this up. It's designed to be specific to the direction that you're heading, and it's going to bring you some ideas and suggestions that don't require a context change or change of job or essentially or permission. So this is here. You can copy and paste it, follow it up afterwards. And whilst it is all great to have these paper exercises, the most important thing is that action beats analysis every time. So in this final step, I want you to scribble down the first thing that you can do to initiate this change. The first thing that's going to take this out of the brain idea into an actual thing that happens. And I'm kind of pulling on my, management consultant background here, because change is only ever going to come from people, process, or tool. So that might be a helpful way of just giving a bit of structure. So who do you need to work with? What process needs to be reviewed? What tools need to be in place? So for this germ of an initiative, a change or an impact, scribble the answers down. A couple of very specific, I could do this week. And again, we're going to do this up to 33, just 2 minutes. And if you finished early, Drop it in the chat. What is the thing that you're actually going to do? Okay, final 60 seconds. Okay, so this is the germ or the seed of an initiative or change or an impact, but it is way more than that. And this matters from a much bigger perspective. It might feel like we're talking about setting up something tiny and small and potentially insignificant. But building something at this climate edge now helps you do bigger and better things later. And it supports your pivot or transition if that is your goal to do. So these kind of levers that you can pull create real world proof and stories for future interviews. And most essentially, it strengthens your personal narrative and your confidence because so many people do the thinking, but not the doing. And so picking these small incremental steps that you can do starts to build that muscle of action beats analysis. And it starts to allow you to show, not tell, that you are interested in this kind of work. So look, this is not easy, especially if you're trying to do this in isolation. So the rest of this workshop is designed to walk you through like a career momentum framework that will make this as easy as possible. And in doing so, we're going to address 3 essentials for building a climate positive career. And it starts with this. Clarity is not optional. You cannot optimize without a goal. And in the world of limited time and energy and attention, both yours and that of your future colleagues, collaborators, and co-founders, clarity gives you leverage. We're going to talk about each of these things a bit more in turn, but clarity is essential. Then the classic, it's not what you know, but who you know. Never been more true. So we're going to talk about community because your community of practice is your career safety net. So rather than going it alone, you will learn faster, stay motivated, and get noticed along the way when you're building a sense of community because you need the support and ideas and visibility, all of which lives in these networks, even if you're trying to change a system that you're in. Because frankly, you probably don't have the best practice for building a shadow carbon account for your supply chain. So your community today becomes your opportunities tomorrow by learning from and solving similar problems, even if they're in different roles. And then lastly, commitment, action over analysis. Commitment, the doing, becomes your differentiator. It is fine to start small, but if you start small and stay visible and work with the resistance because you're going to have a lot of it, not against it, then you will end up making the contribution that you want to make. So we're going to look at each of these in turn with practical steps to help you take action now, soon, and later to keep moving you forward. But before we do that, we're going to take a 2-minute break. So 2-minute leg stretch. And so you can either go for a quick walk, or I'm going to wave my arms around. I'm going to stand up actually. Just break this up because you've got lots of stuff to be thinking about. This is my desk going up. Somewhat unsurprisingly, I have 2 small children. This kind of visual joke, it works great if you're 5. I know you guys are not 5. Okay, so I'm going to put my arms up and I'm going to shake my arms in the air like that. You can follow along at home, that's okay. Either on the screen or not. Okay, on the screen. Nice, Celine. Nice one. Yes, Rabia. Okay, no judgment, Brian. I can see you sat still. You're too cool? Yeah, you're too cool. That's fine. I'm going to consult your physician. I have no responsibility for this. I'm going to carefully, gently, just going to touch the floor, touch my toes. Okay, right. If we were in some kind of like high-powered stage environment, there'd be music pumping. So if you want to just play your own music in your head, that's fine. And I'm just going to shake everything else like that. Okay. All right. Now I said 2 minutes, and everyone who turned their camera off and went for a walk, I've no idea if they're going to come back. No idea when they're like, what their idea of 2 minutes. I didn't say, did I? I didn't say we're going to start at 38 or 39. So if you're here and they're not, like honestly, the best bit, secret. You just gotta work harder than everyone else. That's it. Okay, it's fine. Okay, right, carry on. All right. I'm gonna take the assumption that everyone who is keen and eager are back, and we're gonna press on. One thing I didn't mention is if you've got questions on anything that we're talking about, save them for the end. We've got time for that. Literally anything, right? You have the undivided attention of a professional career coach, and my only intention here is to help you make your contribution. So be thinking of it. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that now is that when we did this for the Western time zone yesterday, I got to questions and it was silence, which is great. It just makes me think, you know what? I've answered everyone's questions. It was that amazing. But I also then had to start picking on people. So if you don't want to get picked on, think of some questions beforehand and drop them in the chat for later. All right. So the 3 things: clarity, community, commitment. And yes, that is alliterative. Thank you very much. I thought it was clever too. So clarity is essential because your resource is constrained. And this applies as much in a role as it does for looking for a new one. And obviously what I mean by resource here is time and attention. But I also like to think of it as your cognitive availability. Like the ability to hold so many things in your head at any one time is very limited. And secondly, you need to be clear on the one thing, the one problem that you are going to solve for somebody else. And the reason for that is, if someone else cannot describe what you want to do clearly, then you are wasting the opportunity of having other people advocate for you. Now, I said at the start, there are some common mistakes. Second biggest mistake, I'm going to be open to anything, so I will cast my net broadly. Now, that is a terrible, genuinely a terrible strategy. Because when you're doing that, what you're doing is you're spreading yourself extremely thinly. And you're making it very difficult for anybody else to understand how to help. So I've worked with people who start with like, yeah, I want to work in climate. Brilliant. Okay, so what is it you want to do? Well, I know I'm very passionate about the ocean, but also I'm looking at finance and renewables. Like, whoa. Okay, so who are you speaking to? How are you building the network of people who are going to give you this opportunity? Well, I'm speaking to everybody. I'm going to all these webinars. Okay, that does not help. You need one thing. And the challenge with one thing is that we have the tyranny of choice. Because we're smart, capable, talented individuals, we could probably do anything given enough time and enough focus. So in order to combat that, we have to decide. Now, I've married into a Greek family, and my Greek wife often gives me, sometimes usefully, sometimes on the edge of patronizing, the Greek or Latin derivation of English words. And she mentioned this one, and it's really stuck with me. To decide isn't to pick one. Decide shares the same root as insecticide and homicide and pesticide. To decide means to kill off the others. To decide means effectively to say no. So, as part of your ability to marshal your efforts towards one thing, one problem for one group of people, you have to say no. Now, that's really hard because a lot of the time we don't know enough about our options and we don't know what it would be like to do A, B, or C. Now, I spend a lot of time studying decision science. It's one of my favorite areas in behavioral psychology. And all of decision science talks about the importance of criteria before options. And what I mean by that is your ability to say no depends on your understanding of you as much as your understanding of the options. So I use this filtering analogy in all of my work because it is so important. Whether that's picking a project at work or a future career, all of these decisions require a degree of self-knowledge first if you want to give yourself the best chance of success. So, in each case, we've got these four fundamentals. And very briefly, so we've got these four criteria. And very briefly, we've got the fundamentals, which is the shape of work, the kind of things that you would describe your job to if you're maybe talking to your parents or your friends. It's like there is a lot of travel, or it is remote, or it is for a big company, or it has got lots of money, or is in small teams. Like the shape of the work environment and your life design. If you write down clearly what your ideal shape of work is, then it gives you an immediate way to start saying no to things that don't fit. Secondly, your strengths. Now, strengths and values, and they're all these sort of assessments online, and they're a little bit like, and I apologize in advance if you're an out-and-out astrologist, they're a little bit like horoscopes in that they're kind of a bit made up, but you can find something of value in it if you look hard enough. So do the strengths test, take the values assessments, but look for the things that resonate. Because when you're playing to your strengths, you've basically got an unfair advantage because you're doing something that you find easy that other people find hard. And it is true that people enjoy things that they are good at. So clarity around your strengths gives you the ability to say no to things that are not going to play to them. Same with your values. Now, I don't mean the big values like, oh, I think big oil is terrible and we should not put plastic in it. Yes, they are values, but I mean things like whether you value meritocracy or reward for effort. Because there's a nuance there. If you value this meritocratic approach to work, you're much more likely to find a degree of alignment in a small, hungry startup. Because when there's a deadline on Monday morning, there just isn't enough people to deliver it in just one team. So everybody comes together. Everyone has to, when their biggest client, their angel client, makes a demand, the whole group come together. So it's very meritocratic. We kind of work, eat, play together. Whereas if you've got this reward for your own effort, then you're much more likely to enjoy time at a big consultancy, where it's very much up, 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 depend on your performance. Even if you're the team lead or you're like head of a particular group, it is what you are doing and you are rewarded because of it. So understanding these values and how you can relate them to the type of work that you're considering is really important in your ability to say no to the things that don't fit. But probably the most important and certainly the most interesting is your sense of self, your identity. Because I come from the Jungian school of psychology where we have many different selves. If you've seen the film Inside Out, you kind of know what I'm talking about. We've got these kind of competing voices which are going on. And some of them are very helpful, right? Some of them are very repressed and very pushed down, like a creative side or a caring or nurturing side, of your personality that's really going to be that you really want to bring to the fore in your future work. But you also have the less helpful side. You have the imposter syndrome, the self-sabotage, the perfectionist, the procrastinator. All of these parts of you, they're very real, and they often turn up in ways that you can identify, name, and then work with. So I've kind of belabored this point a little bit because this is always the first step with all of my clients, is this clarity of criteria. Because you can't make judgments about, is it going to be this kind of work or that job or these area? Is it going to be renewables or is it going to be, until you have the criteria to make a judgment with. So very quickly, after you have the criteria, you have to fill the funnel. And that's all about trying to find creative ways to basically find a job you don't know exists. But we're not going to get into that today because it becomes very overwhelming very quickly. So I just want to encourage you to spend a bit of time with this question of, how will you know when you've found what you're looking for? And the answer is by knowing your criteria. Okay, so clarity of criteria, clarity of direction, clarity of intent. Next thing is community. Now, up front, I'm going to say that networking is a horrible word. It's transactional and it favors the sort of self-proclaimed extroverts. And often it kind of still reeks of bad wine and terrible cheese and people pushing damp business cards into your hand saying, hey, I want to do this. Maybe that's just my own sort of 1970s stereotypes. So I'm giving you permission as of today to stop networking and start community building instead, especially in the climate and sustainability space. Because when you shift from networking, which is this transactional, I've got something that I want from you, to this community building approach where we genuinely are all in this together, we only win when we all win, it absolutely changes the way that you approach this concept and the likelihood of building reciprocal relationships. So I want to offer a different way to think about it altogether. And that's another 3 C's. Like I mentioned, I'm a recovering management consultant, so everything in my world is either a Chevron diagram or a pyramid. So the 3 C's: curiosity, connection, consistency. So you don't need to be the expert. And in fact, asking smart questions is sometimes far more valuable than pretending you have all the answers. And I learned this very early on in my career when, for whatever reason, whenever we had town hall or group sessions or even just in team environments, I always went first with asking the most obvious question in the room. Now, and I think that was because I wasn't afraid of sounding stupid, because I just didn't care. Like I mentioned before, I did a lot of my career in environments where I wasn't really connected to it. But what happened is that became my superpower, and people would ask me to do that in their talk because no one else was. So it would be everyone is thinking, oh, I'm not sure I understand that, but I daren't ask. And so just having the ability to ask an insightful question wasn't just helpful for the person trying to explain it, it was helpful for the whole community. And that's true in the climate space as well. So the awesome Slack channel and the community on Work on Climate, on LinkedIn, everywhere there is this online network, asking the smart questions is as valuable as pretending to be an expert and writing a point of view. So be curious. Next one, connection. You can be the connector, not just the seeker, because you've got way more value to offer than you think, even if you're early in your transition. So maybe it's a podcast or a link or simply saying, like Brian, Celine, you should meet because you've got this. So you can connect these people without being an expert. And the third one is consistency. It's easier to spell than it is to say. Consistency. This is a long game, and that means treating it like a project, not like a panic button. So track who you've spoken to, note what you've learned, and use a CRM tool or a simple spreadsheet or some way of keeping a written register of who you are speaking to. Now, I have a guide which you can download at the end of this conversation, and in there, there's a link to a template that you can use designed for this. It's a pretty simple Notion template. just to sort of like keep track of who you're speaking to, and it'll send you a reminder like, hey, you haven't spoken to this person for a few weeks. Okay. All of this community building, brings us to everybody's favorite. I'm going to ask you in the chat, in one word, to tell me how you feel about LinkedIn. And whilst you do that, I am once again going to sit down. All right, what have we got? Buzzwords, cringy self-promotion. Yeah, shouty dickheads, I'd like to think of it as. Pal, hate it. Virgin beat me to it. Yeah, right? It's fucking awful. It really is. Only if you are not using it correctly. Now, you know that kind of dinner party conversation? What have you changed your mind about in the last 5 years? Well, this is something that I have changed my mind about massively. Because until I figured out how to actually use this platform smartly, I went with all the things, except Rabia, it makes me feel alive and connected. All right, 10 points. But yeah, the whole hating it, parallel universe, AI slap, all of that, I was in that camp. But it doesn't need to be this way. And I'm going to show you why. So there are two problems that we face when we start joining the conversation on LinkedIn. The first is we let the algorithm show us a whole pile of crap from people that we are disinterested in and who are the shouty dickheads. And that's because we haven't invested the time to either educate the algorithm or skip the algorithm suggestions altogether. So the first thing is 5 minutes a day, rather than scrolling. Never, ever waste your time scrolling on LinkedIn. First of all, find the people that you want to follow. Find the pracademics, I like to call them, the practical academics, people who write the reports, but also are working in the field that you're interested in. Go find their profile, and if they're active on LinkedIn, then follow them and like their content. Do that every day for 5 days. Rather than scrolling and hoping you're going to be shown something, do the research to find the thought leaders in your field first, and then go and find them. And then, and I hate to use the word hack, but it's kind of a little bit of a shortcut here. Rather than having to go to your feed and see who's been doing stuff, rather than do that, go to the search button, click in there and press enter to bring up the advanced filters, and then filter for posts in the last 24 hours by members, and write down or find and click in the 10 people, the 10 thought leaders in your field, and then show results. And what you'll get is the very latest cutting edge research, point of view, and information about your chosen field from the world's leading experts. And this is the hack. Then look at the URL in your browser, copy that, and keep it. So that next week, when you want to see what is the latest thinking around a particular topic, you don't need to go to your scrolling cavalcade of bullshit. You just simply click the URL that you've built, and the 10 people whose valued opinion you have already sought out will come up on your screen. So I've now been on LinkedIn seriously for the last year and a bit. I cannot remember the last time I idly went through the feed that LinkedIn gives me. I'm just not interested. What I'm interested in is using it as a research tool. And so I use this trick. I use this approach to build myself like my educational ecosystem. Because one of the greatest things that LinkedIn does is it helps you learn. And so what I've done is that I have all of my past and current clients, one click, see everything that they're up to, because I love helping people and I like to see their success stories. That's just me. But I also have a green finance group, and what else have we got? Right now, off the top of my head, I can't remember. But Each area of interest that I have is one click, see what I've got. So do I get sort of doom scrolled into oblivion? No, because I don't see any of that crap. What I see is a very curated list, like my own magazine, of very informative information. And it helps me because then I start here. I have this incremental approach, and you can do the same. Because once you've got this list, you can listen and learn. And all that is every morning or every few days or whatever sort of like frequency allows, is one click, read from 10 of the best. You're up to date. You know what's going on. But the comments, the conversations in those groups can be incredible. Now, over the course of a few weeks, you kind of learn whose audience are active and intelligent and provocative and useful. And if you don't have your own community, that's not a problem because you can borrow theirs. You join the conversations on those folks. So David, damn it, just gone off my head. Green finance guy. Anyway, I'll find it and I'll share it later. The conversations that go on in his sort of comments are really good because you have financial professionals discussing the implications of regulatory change, like really discussing. So if you want to learn and you want to sort of get into that field, it is incredibly valuable. And you can join in because asking smart questions, even if they're obvious, is the service that you provide to other people who are also reading this list. Because the eyes of your future colleagues, collaborators, or maybe co-founders are on this list as well. And you can show up. So you can listen and learn, and you can comment and join the conversation. And then you can curate. So as you are learning and developing and putting together your own thinking and your points of view, you're finding out stuff from all over the place. So you can then post, I read this article recently, here are some thoughts about it. You don't have to be the leading expert. And one of the great ways of thinking about this is the service that you can provide is to you of 10 hours of conversation or reading ago. Because if you're looking after somebody who's just a few steps behind you, as you progress, you're helping more and more people. And it's so much easier to move from curating to creating, which is writing your own point of view or writing something that you've noticed, when the person, your audience, and this is, all of the famous writers all say, think of one person and write to them. Well, think of you 3 weeks ago. That's the person that you're writing this for. That's the person that you're going to help. That's the person, the persona that you can help to learn and educate. And it's a great way to test for bullshit because you're not going to stand for that. And you of 3 weeks ago isn't going to stand for that. So you're going to write authentically and usefully. So as you go up this ladder, it's listen and learn, comment in, join the community in the conversation, curating other things that are going to be useful for other people, and then creating for the you of 2 or 3 weeks ago. You start to develop and build this community of practice, people who are like-minded, trying to solve the same problem, intellectually engaged in what they are doing. So LinkedIn can be incredible, but only if you use it intentionally. Now, I spent, like I say, the last year, 18 months, figuring all this out. I ended up so frustrated because this is where your jobs come from, period. It is not sequentially looking for coffee conversations. It is too slow to do that. One at a time is terrible. But when you have a broadcast, when you are part of the conversation, when you are engaged in a community of people who know how to describe what it is that you want to do, because you have clarity around, I want to focus on cocoa supply chain sustainability infrastructure for large organizations, or whenever you can say, I help blank do blank so that they can blank, right? That is the level of clarity that you need. And in each case, it's solving a problem by doing a thing so that your client or service or company can do something better. So when you have all of those things together, then the magic will happen. Then the opportunity is open for you. Then you're not alone randomly sending CVs on pointless job missions that you are neither fit for, aligned for, or will be considered for. Just like the other 1,000 people spraying and praying with quick and easy apply to jobs that they're not going to get. Your career is built on your community. 70% of jobs come through a warm connection, your loose connection of friends, as Andrew Burkis describes it. And this is how to do that. Now, I ended up writing an entire course about this because I found it absolutely fascinating. I'm not here to pitch or sell that, but have a look. Can't even remember. Do you know what? I might actually, I'll find the link to it and I will include that in what we do later. But I am so convinced that this is the way forward. And I was so angry at people being put off because it is such a terrible experience that I have basically written a course that goes through these steps and a lot more besides. Okay, so the final part of all of this that I want to talk about today is the biggest problem that I see for most people looking to make an impact in their own organization or to pivot into a new career. And that is this. Now, I realize now that looking at that, it looks like an Instagram platitude. Maybe if it had like a sunset in the background, it'd be more easily recognizable. And I am already ashamed that I've written that. The reason I've written that is because in my world, there is coaching and there is mentoring. Coaching is asking leading questions and helping an individual overcome their personal barriers. And mentoring is the benefit of advice. Now, it would be a massive disservice to the 30 years of corporate experience, hiring hundreds of people, taking businesses through exits and all of that kind of stuff, to ignore all of that work because it's not really coaching. And at the same time, most people don't want more leading questions. Life's just too fucking short. Just help me is how most of my client engagements start. But very quickly, what smart, capable, intelligent people realize is that one of the biggest issues are the barriers that you put in front of yourself. And I'm talking about imposter syndrome or perfectionism, or basically a lot of it comes down to fear of rejection, fear of getting it wrong, fear of trying and failing. So I want to have a look at a couple of ideas that are around this concept of commitment. And we're going to do that. And by the way, I'm going to think of a better way to say that. No one's stopping you except you. That it actually is terrible. So we're going to look at commitment because action beats analysis. And after helping hundreds of people with this journey, most of the time, everyone is great with that. And then I'll come back in a week's time and say, so how did it go? Oh, well, this happened and that, and that. I was like, okay, now it is not my job as a coach to say, you're kind of just excusing it. There's like all of this stuff is like, blah, 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 because that is a terribly unprofessional way to address the issue. But the issue which is underneath is often something bigger than, oh, I didn't have the time, or right now is not a great time because. Now, to be clear, I am not your therapist, and we are not going to solve your lifetime of procrastination due to fear of rejection that came out of something that happened at your school. But what we are going to do is the single most significant thing that we can do in 10 minutes. And we're going to name some of these barriers. And we're going to use a little behavioral psychology. Let me try this one more time. Science. We're going to use science. That involves episodic future thinking, construal level theory, and future self-continuity. None of which matters to you people, but it is essential that I pull on my science background in order to make sure that I'm confident that this is the best way to go about it. So, this is a very simple, powerful exercise. This is going to be a pen and paper exercise. And the object really is to surface some of the unspoken blockers that stop us taking action. And it is called a barrier postcard. So we're going to write a postcard from the future, or more specifically from your future, from you, which, I mean, I read a lot of science fiction and I can see this happening one day. Anyway, this is a you in which you have overcome the barriers and you're doing the work that you want to do. You are making this contribution. And whether that's either in the form of a new initiative or a new role within your current context, or you're in a new job and career altogether, that is the you that is writing this. So we're going to start with a blank piece of paper, or if you're typing, maybe a new note, because it's something that might be useful to come back to. So feel free to actually draw a postcard shape or template. And for reference, for anyone under the age of probably about 25, this is what a postcard looks like. And you write on it with a pen. And it saves people having to open envelopes. And this is how you answered quizzes on TV shows so that no one had to open thousands of. Anyway, right. That's just me feeling old. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to write on this postcard is, I nearly didn't start. This is you in the future, remember? Looking back. Doesn't matter when, how far in the future. It's looking back to now. I nearly didn't start because. And what most people are going to start with things are like, didn't have the time, didn't believe it's possible. Or some other ones which are, I didn't have the skills. I needed to start because I didn't have the skills to do that. Now, all of those things might be true. But if you allow yourself to scratch a little bit deeper, these limiting beliefs, like, is it that you don't have the skills? Well, how do you know? Have you tested against the market? Who has told you that? What are the gaps that what are the things that you could do now that don't require further training? Is it perhaps fear of rejection, fear of wasting your time? Can you go a little bit beyond that first level? Here is the reason. This is not easy work. I will tell you off the bat. So this is, again, an example, a starter. Now I'm going to give this 3 minutes. List as many as you can. And we're all friends here. So drop a few in the chat. See if your hesitation, the personas that hinder, can find some friends in the chat. I can almost guarantee that you'll find someone else with the same issue, same reason. All right. We are 8 minutes past. I'm going to give this till 11. And I'm going to see if I can find the link to that LinkedIn course. Okay, I can still see people writing. Ooh. And I've just kicked my laptop stand over. Professional. So for those who have got there, the next question is, but I got through it by. Now, how did you solve this? Thinking about your future state, you're looking back. How did you beat this? This question of hesitation or perfectionism or lack of time. I just well on the lack of time. People don't do things because they should, right? People do things because they feel, because they want to. So time isn't about making time. Time is about the emotional connection to why you want something. And this is easy to understand when you think about the number of failed diets, wasted gym memberships. People feel they should do things because, you should go and exercise. But if you can connect to something a bit more powerful, a bit more emotive, like the fact that if you don't exercise, you're going to die of a heart attack and leave your children cold and alone, then you're really, really going to get to the gym far more easily. It's the thing that's going to get you out of bed. And it's kind of the same with this. When you have that decision to make, like, are you going to sit and binge watch the next Netflix series? Or are you going to invest the time in establishing your criteria for your next move? When you have that reason why, that kind of emotive connection to the work that you want to do, you are far more likely to make the choice that you think you should do. So, lack of time isn't ever a lack of time. It's a question of your emotional connection. And that improves dramatically when you have the clarity of intent. You know the problem that you want to solve. Okay, so I'm going to give this just another 30 seconds. And I'm going to tell you that the reason why these exercises are very short is a simple technique called forced brevity. Because most people get 80% of what they actually want to do out in the first 2 or 3 minutes. And secondly, they then tend to second guess themselves by going back to it. So it's like a system 1-2 thinking. Those top of mind things like, this. And then you can spend a lot longer going, yeah, but actually I think it's this. Those first answers are way more likely to be the genuine actual issues. And it's this post rationalization that then gets us because we think that we are smart enough to figure something else out. And those answers are less useful. So we're going to wrap that up there. Hopefully you've got a couple of paired responses, things where you might be in the way and how you're going to address that. Because your future self knows the answer. God, that sounds very mystical, doesn't it? But what I mean is, this is this behavioral research, right? It is far more easy to do this future casting and look back than trying to solve the problem from the frame of reference that you have right now. Okay, so this is the moment that I remind you that career change is not a mystery. It's not about having more willpower. It is about having structure. Remember what I said right at the start. Without structure, you will fail. And I also mentioned that I am a recovering management consultant, so it's chevrons and pyramids all the way. Happily, this clarity of thinking, this method and process is incredibly effective when it comes to career design. And it brings this structured, science-backed support so that you make use of your time most effective, and it gives you very early visible progress, which is one of the key sort of motivators for keeping moving forward. So if you've ever felt stuck in your own head or scattered by too many options or unsure where to start, that is the moment where structure can change everything. So clarity matters because you cannot optimize your time without clear priorities. And your priorities cannot be established without clear criteria. Community matters because it is incredibly hard to do this alone. Having a strong community is the difference between you sitting with 20 browser tabs open every evening trying to figure shit out, research step by research step, versus popping into conversations where the answers are already there for you. And you have the live to and fro conversations. Say, hey, I was looking at this and I was thinking about that. You will discover so much more when you are connected to the community. And commitment matters because ideas don't count. So many of my clients start in a trapped loop of thinking about all the things that they can do or should do rather than the things that they want to do. And so we need to move from analysis to action in the shortest route possible in order to begin making a meaningful journey and a process. So I said at the start, what matters now isn't that you've listened to all of this, or you've done these seed exercises. What matters now is what you do next. And so to help that, I have this. It is entirely free. It is a guide to climate career conversations. It's the thinking, or some of the thinking that I have around how to start building some of this community stuff. In there, we're talking about how to do this thing with LinkedIn, how to find the right people, how to, a couple of like scripts for how to do some outreach, how to not ask for someone's time, never ask for someone's time. The answer will be no. Asking for an A or B opinion, because that's way easier. The number of people that I get asking me, saying like, oh, can I have 30 minutes to pick your brains? I mean, technically I'm a professional career coach and the answer should be yes. But until someone can tell me about what and why, the answer is no, because there's a long list of people wanting that. And when I was doing the climate tech advisory stuff, I'd get loads of keen career seekers saying like, hey, can we have a coffee? It's like, well, no, you can't. Like, I have a job here, right? But the people who would ask me, I'm thinking of getting into this area, and I was thinking, should I read this book or that book? Like an A or B, that's dead easy for me to be like, oh, I think A, great choice. And the smart people would then do that. And a week later come back and say, hey, I read that book, it's really useful. Here's what I thought about it. And then you've got the beginning of a conversation. So the cognitive effort of the receiving individual is way more important than you getting their time. So make it easy. Give them an A or B question. So all of these kind of things are all in this guide. Entirely free. You can download it using that QR code or that bit.ly thing. And if you do so, unfortunately, I will then email you a whole bunch of stuff. And the reason for that is because in 2 weeks' time, cohort 8 of the Climate Career Accelerator is kicking off. And I find this very difficult. I find this very difficult because on the one hand, everyone hates sales. And on the other hand, I need like people to come and do this. It is how I help. So I'm trapped in this horrible situation because you people do not make it easy. Because no one goes online and says, I hate my job, I want a new career. So I can't find you. So I have to constantly be broadcasting and saying like, hey, come and get help. Hey, come and get help. Hey, everyone, come and get help. And you have to find me in order for me to help you. Anyway, that's just, personal burden to bear. But it starts in 2 weeks. It's 6 weeks long. It's a cohort program. You can join with, like-minded individuals, and it goes through the whole process in 6 weeks. Now, obviously, you don't get a job in 6 weeks. What you get is lifetime access to the whole process. Criteria, the reasons you will fail, how to find a job you don't know exists, how to develop your thinking, do your pitching, your positioning, how to interview well, and ultimately, how to make the contribution that you want. And you do that all together. And at the end of that 6 weeks, most people, somewhere in the middle is the point at which they go, oh shit, I need to do this work. And then they kind of feel like they're falling behind a little bit. It doesn't matter because over the last 7 cohorts, I've recorded all of the lessons, provided all of the framework, made it all available online. So when we come together as a group, it's much more about finding the community, finding like friends for your demons. Like, oh, I didn't do it because, oh yeah, me neither. And solving this sort of work together. So yeah, basically, if you come and get the guide, that's it. You're on the list. And over the next, how long have we got left? About 8 days. I will send you increasingly urgent sounding emails to come and do this work together. And I apologize in advance, but honestly, this is how I get. Well, first of all, it is my favorite way to work because I love working in groups. And secondly, it is, like I said at the start, my mission is your contribution. And this is the most effective way I have found in helping hundreds of people go make their contribution. Okay, so that's pretty much it from me. And I will just say one thing, and that is genuinely, thank you. Thank you for caring enough to make time in your day to come and listen to this. It's people like you guys that restore my faith in humanity, because it's pretty bleak out there, right? But the reason I do all of this is because I know that we have the tools, the technology. What we don't have is the talent. And I spent so much of my career working with people who are so smart, so capable, and so dispirited that they wanted basically to leave and quit. And now my job is to help those people like you, come and make something positive happen. And so I am massively appreciative to meet people who care, like you guys. So thank you very much. Okay. And Jasma, that is invite everyone for feedback. We do these things quite regularly, and I always want to know what can be better.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Andy, for such a great session. I hope you all are feeling encouraged and like you have some things to help you get going on your climate career journey. So please use that QR code that's on the screen right now to go ahead and share your live feedback. It should take just a couple of minutes. And if you're not yet part of the Work on Climate community, please feel free to join. There's some links in the chat for you to do that. And also, I wanted to clarify that we will be sharing the recording of this session on our YouTube channel. Just give us a day or two. It'll be up there for anyone who wants to rewatch or maybe go back and check out some more of the tips that Andy shared.
Awesome. Or send to someone. Send to someone who needs help. Because you know what I was saying before? I can't see you people. So we just have to put it out there, and people have to find us, help them find the help. Questions. We have 6 minutes. You remember what I was saying? Asking the obvious question is a service for your fellow participants. What do you want to know? How can I help? I knew it. Silence.
I have a
Silence.
question.
Yes, please. Yes.
Regarding clarity, that's one of the things that I struggle most with because I am a generalist from my background. So I've worked in different industries and contexts, kind of like in a project manager role. Would you recommend that it's still advisable to say, I want to focus in this field, or if it's fine in terms of clarity to say, my pitch would then be I help organizations work better through or achieve their goals through better project management without necessarily having to set a very defined area, because there are a lot of areas of interest I have, I guess.
Yeah. So this is a common question, right? Mid-career, there is an ability to do a lot of things. We've done a lot of stuff. And the answer is, it is absolutely essential that you niche down as far as possible, right? So yes, you can, you can be good at project management, but do you want to go and help Series B scale-ups, seed stage, like brand new ideas, large scale corporates? So even within that, the requirements are massively different. And this is the essential part. and the number of people that you can speak to is just exponentially bigger. The more sort of options I know, I'm going to work in project management. Well, that's fucking massive. That's huge. But I help Series B. So actually, project management is a great example. So, okay, so very specifically in project management, one of the great requirements is as you go kind of just into just like Series A funding, when all of a sudden everything is slightly bigger than what the current team is used to. And that kind of like founder plus one or two, that kind of tier, suddenly realize that they can't manage this. And they've just got a pile of cash to deliver something that they don't know how to deliver. So there's this niche space right there to say, I can bring clarity and sort of like in the chaos. Because, you know, startup world is just a constant rolling shit show of people trying to get stuff done. Whereas if you can come in and say, I will bring structure to your delivery, then that's exactly what they're going to want to hear. And the avatar of the decision maker, you can talk to them about that because you can empathize. So being able to solve the problem is not as important as being able to empathize with the problem. And you will get your work when you can speak to one person and they can hear that you understand them. So it's very easy to find that one person if you're thinking about recently funded climate tech startups in alternative proteins, right? Because it's a niche, it's a smaller number of people. So at the time that you spend researching, learning, community building is so much more powerful when you can focus your attention on the number of recently funded alt protein climate tech companies. You can find the thought leaders, you can participate in their conversations, you can learn who the competitors are for each of the organizations, because it's not, I will do project management. So absolutely, the more niche you can be, the more benefit each of the people that you're speaking to gets from you, because your resource is limited, your attention, your focus, and your cognitive effort. Does that help?
Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay. There were a few others coming here. Do you feel like spending time on LinkedIn is more productive than niche climate change communities and their Slack or other boards? Christine, where are you? Let me see. Christine, that is a brilliant question. We don't have points for questions, but that is definitely a 10-point question. Christine, you're not on camera. Okay. So the utility of LinkedIn versus other climate communities depends on where you are right now. If you are in an organization that is going to make it difficult if you are currently broadcasting your intent to do something else, maybe if that fear is the problem, then start in the more niche communities. Having said that, the ideal space is learning in niche space, but then broadcasting on LinkedIn. Because everyone that you meet, the first place that they will look, because it is publicly accessible, and there's, I think, 1.1 billion active users on LinkedIn, is on LinkedIn. And so when you're joining those conversations, and when you meet someone and they come and look for you, or when you apply for a job and they check out your content, your history, your conversations, they will find all of that on LinkedIn, rather than that individual decision maker having to have that double coincidence of being part of the same channels or networks or groups, or part of the same conversation in a niche environment. So I would say that LinkedIn is the place to be. Okay, sorry, super early. Okay, super early. Yeah, I gotta say, you know, my pre 10 a.m. face is a lot more craggy than this. Okay, so where do we get up to? Spend more time. Keep in touch. Yes, keep in touch. Do it. Do it. Stay in touch. Use the climate connector. Like, find some people who are doing the same thing. What is the name of the LinkedIn group concerning green finance? Can you recollect? So no, that was the list of people that I know who speak about it. It's Dave. Do you know what? When we get up to time, I will come back to that one. I think that seems to be it. Okay. I will find David right now. Actually, you can probably search for him as well, but it should be on my list in LinkedIn. Anybody else? Literally anything. Otherwise, we shall wrap up. And who was asking about LinkedIn? Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
I was gonna say, Robbie had her hand up. Go ahead.
Who's speaking?
Thank you.
The join our community thing at the end of the survey is a 404 error. That's a David Carlin. There we go. So the 404 error is an issue with work and climate.
So can I
Okay.
ask a question?
Yes.
It will be a bit an awkward question though.
Either.
I don't know if there are lots of professionals who are working on the climate field and has Asperger's. Because I believe that is a totally different and difficult case. For example, in my terms, because, you know, like when I get obsessed with a question, I solve the problem eventually. And that's what I'm really talented for. But I cannot find a job title that fits me well. Because I can solve any kind of issues when it comes to, I don't know, circular economy. Like in general, let's say a company has, like they want to improve their ESGs, for example, and they don't know how. So I can find any solution from the supply chain to the social impact. I can work with the farmers and I can go there. And it is not like I know what I want to do. I want to solve problems in an ecosystem, but I don't know how to name it. So I cannot clarify it.
Okay. So two parts to that question. One is the Asperger's question. So I'm about to share a link. I'm going to suggest that you reach out to Richard Dixon, a friend of mine who is self-described as neurodiverse climate founder, because he's got a lot of advice around this space, which is really cool. And then secondly, to your point around the I can solve any problem in an ecosystem, like what one problem? Because that's what I was saying at the start, right? There are many things that we can solve, but what one thing that the problem, not the like the big scale, like I can solve a particular issue around climate, the human scale, because it's a thing that someone is lying awake at night worrying about. And typically that's a little bit of an understanding around the kind of work that you want to do and the kind of size of organization you want to do, so that you can learn and understand what the organization's people, the decision makers who are sitting with the money to give to you, their problem. That is the problem that you need to be able to solve. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Have a chat
helpful.
to Richard. Have a chat. Reach out to Richard. Tell him that I sent you.
Thank you.
Brian.
Hey, Andy, I was just going to throw a kind of forward-looking question out there. Curious from Andy's eyes, what are you seeing as the one or two focus areas that we know kidding just got to get at?
So we live in interesting times, Brian. And there are two things which are happening in the market. First of all, there is a shift in, actually, wait a minute, let me start this again. The answer to your question is, my opinion doesn't count. Follow the money. Like, in summary, that is what I would say. Follow the money. And one of the best ways to do that is to look at where venture capital money is flowing. And ctvc.com is a regular newsletter that just rounds up all of the investment rounds, the mergers and acquisitions, all of that, like the where stuff's going. Now that's obviously only really in climate tech, and there's a whole other part. People tend to just like climate is climate tech, but it's a really good indicator. So follow the money. So that said, my point of view at the moment is that anything which is super cutting edge, the fund, like the research, where like organizations that still are in the data research and we wear lab coats, again, it's a bit of a stereotype, but like that kind of company, they're really struggling because it's a risk, right? Anything that has got a proven ROI, electrification, most of renewables, or that's just happening because there is money to be made. And particularly in renewable transition, grid infrastructure, those are big problems which are understood, are solvable, but are under-resourced. Has a massive demand in that space. So yeah, anything that's kind of already established, already kind of past that tipping point of on the hype curve of like, okay, this is actually happening now, is just going to go. If you were thinking about hydrogen cell fuel development, I wouldn't make that jump right now because everyone is keeping their powder dry, trying to hold off. And the second thing is, I get asked a lot at the moment whether I think that the market is drying up. And the answer is no, I don't. What's happening is people are retitling, redescribing, and basically hiding sustainability functions in large organizations. So there's a lot of sustainability teams which have been rebadged and rebranded as supply chain efficiency teams. And the sort of sustainability comms team have just been rolled into marketing and comms. Now, this is partly in response to the Trump administration, but it's also partly because it's a sign of maturity. Now, I cut most of my teeth in the startup world in the digital marketing revolution of the 2010s. And what started initially as you'd have a digital marketing person or digital marketing team, what eventually happened is you couldn't get a job in digital marketing because it became just part of marketing, right? Like the digital element of it just got folded into, well, it's just it is marketing, just now it's a different channel. And so that looks like, if you can track it, like the number of jobs posted, digital marketing expert, blah, 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 it all went down like this because marketeers recognized the importance of the digital space, the internet and everything. Turned out it's gone quite well. So they kind of figured out that actually that's just a skill that you need to have. And sustainability and climate is kind like in different pockets, it's heading in that direction. So supply chain, procurement, policy is increasingly not a specialist, but it's being embedded in. So it's harder to find. It's being called different stuff, which is fucking like, it's really hard. Hence my reason, broadcasting about the human problem that you solve is far more effective than one by one, find and reply. I hope that helps.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. Okay. Ignatia, top 3 recommended experts to follow. Well, one of them is David Carlin from his finance climate tech specific. Who else do I like? Who else is on my list? So that Dave Hamid, founder of Altruistic. I mean, I worked there. I advised with those guys, so I'm obviously going to say that. But he's a big thinker, and he's someone who's got a point of view, which is very interesting in the climate tech space. Very specific to like climate, like accounting or metrics. But again, like who do you follow? Well, climate tech is a massively broad and wide open space, right? Everything from alternative packaging, alt protein, all the way through to different renewable sources. And, it's such a broad space. Climate tech is such a broad space. So again, follow the money. So I can't remember her name, but if you look for CT, Climate Tech Venture Capital, CTVC, like the collaborators and co-founders of that newsletter are very good at posting on LinkedIn as well. So I'd go and have a look at that. Wait a minute. Is it that one? I mean, that looks leading. Yes. Yeah, that's it. .co, sorry. Yeah, them. Now, you don't need to pay and join the community. Just get the newsletter is what I do. Cool. All right. Guys, we are somewhat over time. I hope it's been useful. If you have any questions, find me on LinkedIn and ask. Because that's, like I said before, my mission is your contribution. So I'm here to help. So just let me know how I can help. And right now in the UK, it's kind of lunchtime. So I've got to go get something to eat. Nice one. All right. See you guys. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.